was a cold Friday evening, and Daniel sat alone in his small apartment on the second floor of a quiet street. The air outside was heavy with winter fog, and the faint sound of traffic came and went like soft waves. Daniel had worked all day at a printing shop. His hands smelled of ink and paper, and his head felt full of noise. He did not feel like cooking, so he opened his phone and ordered a pizza from the shop 2 blocks away. While waiting, he turned on the television, but the sound barely filled the silence. He looked around the room that had become too still for comfort. It was one of those nights when loneliness crept in quietly, not as sadness but as an empty space that followed him from room to room. He tried not to think too much. He just wanted a warm meal and a little calm. Half an hour later, a knock came at the door. It was softer than usual, like the person knocking was unsure if they should. Daniel opened the door and saw a young woman standing there in the dim light of the hallway. She wore a delivery jacket that looked one size too big, and her cap was pulled low over her face. The name tag on her jacket said Lyra. Her skin looked pale, almost silver in tone, and her eyes caught the light in a strange way, like glass holding a hidden glow. Daniel blinked, thinking it was only the hallway light playing tricks on him. "Pizza for Daniel," she said quietly. Her voice was gentle but carried a slight echo, as if English was not her first language. She handed him the box and gave a small, uncertain smile. Her gloved hands trembled a little from the cold. Daniel took the box, thanked her, and reached into his wallet. When he handed her a few bills as a tip, she hesitated before taking them. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost too soft to hear. She turned quickly to leave, but as she stepped into the hall, a sharp gust of wind blew through the open window at the end of the corridor. The wind caught her thin jacket, and Daniel saw her shiver hard. The jacket was worn, the zipper broken halfway. For a brief moment, she looked small and lost. "Hey," he said before he could stop himself. "Do you want to warm up for a minute?" "It's freezing out there." She looked back, startled, her eyes wide. For a second, Daniel thought she might run. Then she shook her head quickly. "No, thank you." "I have to go," she said. Her words were polite but filled with tension. She hurried away before he could say another word. Daniel closed the door, carrying the warm pizza box into the kitchen. But as he sat down, he found he could not eat right away. Something about that girl's face stayed in his mind. The tiredness, the fear, and the way her eyes seemed to hold both hope and worry at once. He had seen delivery workers before, people tired from long shifts, but there was something different about her. She seemed out of place, like she did not fully belong in the noise and light of the city. He tried to shake off the thought, turning back to the television, but every bite of pizza tasted hollow. He wondered if she had somewhere warm to go. The weather forecast on the screen said the temperature would drop below freezing overnight. He imagined her riding a scooter or walking home through the icy wind. The image bothered him more than he expected. After dinner, he cleaned up and went to the window. Down below, the street was almost empty except for a few passing cars. He saw someone sitting on the bench near the bus stop, a small figure hunched over a backpack. It was hard to see in the fog, but for a second he thought it might be her. The same big jacket, the same stillness. He rubbed his eyes and told himself he was imagining things. There were many delivery workers in the city. Still, he stayed by the window longer than he meant to, watching until the fog covered everything. When he finally went to bed, sleep did not come easily. He kept thinking about that quiet voice and those strange, shining eyes. He wondered what kind of life brought someone to deliver pizza so late in such cold weather. The thought that she might be out there somewhere trying to stay warm made the room feel colder than before. The next morning, Daniel woke early. The sunlight was weak, slipping through the curtains like thin gold dust. He made coffee and tried to focus on his weekend plans, but his mind wandered back to the delivery girl. Curiosity mixed with concern. He did not know her, yet he felt responsible somehow. Maybe it was because she looked so young, or maybe it was because of that lost look in her eyes that reminded him of himself a few years ago, when life had also felt uncertain. Later that day, while running errands, Daniel passed by the pizza shop. He almost kept walking but stopped at the door. Inside, the manager was stacking boxes near the counter. Daniel stepped in, pretending to check a menu board. "Hey," he said casually. "There was a new delivery girl last night. Lyra, I think. She delivered my order. Is she working today?" The manager looked up, surprised. "Lyra? Oh, she hasn't come in today," he said. "Actually, she didn't show up for her morning shift either. Maybe she found another job. Quiet kid, didn't talk much. Daniel nodded, thanked him, and left. But as he walked away, a strange unease filled him. Something told him that Lyra hadn't just quit. He walked around the corner and saw the narrow alley behind the shop where delivery scooters were parked. At the far end, near a row of trash bins, someone was sitting on the ground wrapped in a gray blanket. His heart sank. It was her. She looked up as he approached, her eyes wide with surprise and shame. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. Daniel knelt down, keeping his voice gentle. "You okay? You didn't show up for work." The manager's worried. Her gaze lowered. "I can't go back," she whispered. "They found out my papers are not complete," Daniel frowned. "You mean your ID?" She nodded but said nothing more. The wind moved her hair aside, revealing a faint mark behind her ear like a small circle that shimmered for a second before fading. Daniel blinked, unsure if he had imagined it. "You don't have anywhere to stay, do you?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then shook her head. "It's fine," she said, trying to smile. "I'll be okay." But she looked exhausted, her hands red from cold. Daniel looked at the busy street nearby, then back at her. "Look, I have an extra blanket at home," he said. "And some food. You can come by and rest for a bit. Just until you figure something out." For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then slowly, she nodded. As they walked together toward his apartment, Daniel noticed how carefully she moved, as if every sound or shadow made her alert. She watched everything, the cars, the lights, even the birds, with quiet fascination. When they reached his building, she stopped and looked up at the sky. "It's so close here," she said softly, almost to herself. The clouds Daniel didn't understand, but he smiled anyway. He held the door open for her, feeling that strange mix of curiosity and concern growing stronger. He didn't know who she really was or what story hid behind those bright eyes. All he knew was that he couldn't just leave her out there in the cold. And as she stepped into his apartment for the first time, Daniel had no idea that his simple act of kindness would lead to something far beyond anything he had ever imagined. When Daniel brought Lyra inside his apartment, she stood by the doorway like someone stepping into another world. Her shoes were wet from the melting snow, and her thin jacket clung to her shoulders. The room was warm, filled with the smell of coffee and fresh bread. She looked around carefully, her eyes touching every small thing. The old clock, the books on the shelf, the faint light from the kitchen. Daniel pointed toward the heater near the wall. "You can sit there and warm up," he said kindly. She nodded and walked slowly, keeping her backpack close to her chest as if it held everything she owned. While she sat by the heater, Daniel went into the kitchen and poured a cup of hot tea. He added honey and placed it in front of her. "Here, it'll help you feel better." She looked at the cup for a moment, then lifted it with both hands. Steam rose into her face and she took a small sip. Her shoulders relaxed slightly and for the first time she smiled, a quiet, shy smile that lasted only a second. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," Daniel said. "You can stay for a while if you need to. It's cold out there." She nodded again but didn't answer. He noticed she spoke little, almost like each word had to be chosen carefully. After a few minutes of silence, Daniel tried to make conversation. "So, how long have you been working at the pizza shop?" She thought for a moment before answering. "Not long. Maybe 2 weeks. I needed a job. I like meeting people, but I don't always understand them." Her voice trembled slightly. Daniel smiled to ease her nerves. "City people can be strange sometimes. You'll get used to them." She tilted her head as if thinking deeply. "Maybe," she said softly. Then her gaze drifted toward the window. The snow outside had started again, small flakes spinning in the light. Daniel went to his small cupboard and brought out a folded blanket. "You can use this tonight. It's clean." Her eyes widened. "You mean, stay here?" "Just for tonight," he said. "It's better than freezing outside." Lyra seemed uncertain, her fingers tightening around her cup. "I don't want to be trouble." "You're not," he replied gently. "Everyone needs help sometimes." For a while she said nothing, then gave a tiny nod. "Okay, just tonight." Later that evening, while Daniel cooked soup on the stove, Lyra watched with quiet interest. She asked small questions about the food, what kind of vegetables they were, why people added salt, why the pot made a sound when it boiled. Her curiosity reminded Daniel of a child seeing things for the first time. He asked her where she was from, and for a long time she didn't answer. When she finally spoke, her words came out carefully. Far, very far. Not a place you'd know. Daniel thought she meant another country. Somewhere overseas? He asked. She nodded slowly but didn't explain. There was something in her eyes that made him stop asking. He felt that pushing her for answers might break the fragile trust forming between them. After dinner, Daniel gave her a pillow and blanket on the couch. She looked uncomfortable, unsure how to act. You can rest, he said. I'll be in the other room, she smiled faintly. You are kind. It's nothing, he replied. But deep down, he felt something different, a sense that helping her mattered more than he understood. When he woke up the next morning, the apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the heater. For a moment he thought she had left, but then he saw her sitting near the window wrapped in the blanket watching the sunrise. Couldn't sleep? Daniel asked softly. She turned, her eyes catching the orange light. Your sky is beautiful, she said. He smiled. Our sky. She blinked, realizing what she'd said. I mean, yes, the sky. Her words stumbled and she looked away. Daniel found her odd choice of words interesting, but he didn't ask. Instead, he made breakfast, toast and eggs, and offered her a plate. She ate slowly, as if still learning the taste. You don't eat much, Daniel said. My body needs little, she replied, her tone calm but distant. He laughed lightly. You sound like you're from another planet. To his surprise, she didn't laugh. She only looked down, her hands tightening around the fork. The silence that followed felt heavy. Daniel quickly changed the subject. So what do you plan to do next? Any friends here? She shook her head. No friends, no home. I came here to learn, but it didn't go as planned. Her words were soft, almost sad. Daniel realized she might be more lost than he had thought. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. Well, he said, you can stay a few more days until you figure something out. She looked surprised. Really? Sure, he said with a small smile. It's not much, but it's warm. Something in her face changed then. Her eyes softened, and her voice dropped to a whisper. Thank you, Daniel. Over the next few days, Lyra began to open up slightly. She helped around the apartment, folding laundry and cleaning dishes. Sometimes she'd hum a tune Daniel had never heard before, slow and melodic, almost like a song carried by wind. In the evenings, they'd talk. She asked endless questions about ordinary things, about money, about movies, about why humans cared about pets. Her curiosity made Daniel laugh more than once. But there were moments when she seemed far away, staring through the window at the night sky with a quiet longing that he didn't understand. One night, as snow fell outside, Daniel noticed her hands trembling while holding a mug of tea. Are you cold? He asked. She shook her head. No, I'm just remembering. Something from home? He guessed. Yes, she said softly. Where I come from, the air is never this heavy. The sky's always full of light. Daniel didn't know what to say, so he only nodded. She smiled faintly, as if thankful he didn't question her further. On the fourth night, while Daniel was reading on the couch, Lyra suddenly asked, Why did you help me? He looked up from his book. Because you needed it. But why? She insisted. You didn't know me. I could have lied. Daniel thought for a moment. Maybe, but sometimes you just know when someone's good. She looked at him silently for a while, then said, Where I come from, people don't help strangers. It's not our way. That sounds lonely, he said quietly. She nodded. It is. Her voice carried both sadness and wonder, as if she couldn't decide whether Earth was frightening or beautiful. That night, Daniel went to bed thinking about her words. He realized he knew nothing about who she really was, yet somehow he trusted her completely. When morning came again, Lyra was gone from the couch. Panic rushed through him, but then he heard the sound of water. She was in the kitchen washing dishes. She looked up with a bright smile. Good morning, she said. Daniel laughed in relief. You scared me. I thought you left, she shook her head. Not yet, she said softly. Not until I understand why you're different. He frowned slightly. Different how? She looked at him thoughtfully. You help without wanting anything. That is rare. Maybe it is your nature. Maybe it is your world's secret. Daniel didn't know what she meant, but her words stayed in his mind all day. He didn't realize it yet, but that small moment, her quiet smile, Her strange way of speaking would be the start of something far greater than either of them could imagine. Days passed quietly in Daniel's apartment. The cold outside grew stronger, but inside it was warm and peaceful. Lyra had started to smile more often now. She would help with small chores, sweep the floor, or fold laundry with quiet care. Sometimes she asked about words she didn't understand, writing them down in a small notebook she carried. She loved learning. Her handwriting looked strange. Long, curved letters that didn't look quite human, but Daniel didn't comment. He only smiled and said, "You learn fast." One morning, while Daniel was leaving for work, he found her standing near the window. She was holding her hand up to the sunlight. It passed through her fingers strangely, almost as if the light bent around them. When he looked again, everything seemed normal. Maybe it was just the angle, he thought. "Be careful," he said. "Don't open the window. It's freezing out there," she nodded. "I like to watch the light," she said softly. That evening, when he returned, the apartment smelled faintly of soap and warm tea. Lyra had cleaned everything again. She was sitting on the couch reading an old newspaper. When she saw him, she smiled shyly. "I wanted to make it nice," she said. Daniel laughed. "You're making this place better than I ever did." Her smile grew. "It helps me forget," she said, almost in a whisper. "Forget what?" he asked gently. Lyra hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. "The noise. The burning. The falling," Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked up, startled, as if she had said too much. "Nothing. Just dreams," she added quickly. He didn't press further. She always became quiet when certain subjects came up, like where she was from or what she was running from. Later that night, Daniel sat on the couch while Lyra slept on the blanket nearby. The television played softly in the background, showing a science documentary. The narrator spoke about stars and galaxies, about how small the Earth was in the great sea of the universe. Daniel looked at Lyra, sleeping peacefully. Something about her made him think of those stars, distant and mysterious, yet somehow close. A sudden flicker caught his eye. The lamp near her flickered twice and went out. Daniel stood, checking the switch. Before he touched it, the light came back on. He frowned. Then he noticed something else. Lyra's hands, resting on the blanket, were faintly glowing, soft blue like moonlight underwater. He froze, staring in disbelief. It lasted only a second before fading. He rubbed his eyes, thinking he must be imagining things. But when he glanced again, she was watching him. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear. "You saw it," she whispered. Daniel opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. "Lyra, what was that?" She looked down, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for you to see. I tried to hide it." "Hide what?" he asked softly. She stood up slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. "You won't believe me," she said. "Try me," Daniel replied gently. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she took a deep breath and spoke. "I'm not from here. Not from this world." Daniel blinked, unsure if he heard right. "Not from this world?" She nodded. Her eyes shone faintly again, like glass catching light. "My ship crashed. Long ago, not far from this city. I was not supposed to stay. I was part of a group. But they are gone. I've been hiding since." Daniel stood still, speechless. He looked at her hands, remembering the glow, the strange way she spoke, her curiosity about everything. It suddenly made sense in a strange way. Lyra continued in a trembling voice. "I tried to live quietly. I found work. I wore this form to blend in. But my power is weak now. I can't leave. I only wanted to survive." Her eyes filled with tears that shimmered like tiny sparks of light. "Please don't be afraid of me," she whispered. "I won't hurt you." Daniel stepped closer slowly. He could see the fear in her face, the way her shoulders shook. She wasn't dangerous, just lost. "I'm not afraid," he said softly. "I just don't know what to say." "You think I'm lying," she said, her voice breaking. He shook his head. "No, I believe you." Her eyes widened. "You do?" Daniel nodded. "I don't understand it, but I believe you. I saw it myself. And you've done nothing wrong." Lyra covered her face with her hands. "I thought if someone knew, they would tell the others. They would come for me." "Who?" he asked. She hesitated. "Not from your world. From mine." She looked at him again, her voice soft and full of sadness. "They don't like when one of us leaves without order. They will bring me back. And I can't go back." "Why?" Daniel asked gently. Her voice broke. Because I don't belong there anymore. I don't want to live under command. I want to learn, to feel, to understand why humans care for each other. On my world, we don't have that. Daniel listened in silence. He didn't know what kind of world she came from, but her words carried a truth no story could fake. He sat beside her. Then you'll stay here, he said quietly. No one will find you. You're safe. She looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes. You'd do that? Even after knowing what I am? Daniel smiled faintly. You're the same person who helped clean my home and laughed at my bad cooking. That's who you are to me, Lyra smiled weakly. You're strange, she whispered. I get that a lot, Daniel said with a small laugh. That night, neither of them slept much. Lyra sat near the window watching the stars. Daniel joined her quietly. Do you miss it? He asked. She nodded slowly. Sometimes, but it's not the place I miss. It's the feeling I had before it all went wrong. What happened? She closed her eyes for a moment. We were supposed to study other worlds, but when I saw this one, I wanted to stay. They called it disobedience. I escaped before they could send me back. Daniel tried to imagine that, a girl from another world, running, hiding, surviving by delivering pizzas. It sounded impossible, yet her calm, sincere voice made it feel real. You must have been scared, he said. I was, she whispered. Until you opened the door, her words struck him deeply. He didn't know how something so simple, offering warmth to a stranger, could mean so much. Outside, the wind howled softly, carrying snowflakes that glowed faintly in the city lights. Inside, Lyra's glow reflected faintly on the glass like a small blue star resting beside his reflection. Daniel finally said, You don't have to run anymore. Not while you're here. She turned to him, her eyes full of gratitude. Then maybe, she said softly, this is what home feels like. And for the first time, Daniel saw her smile, not a nervous or shy one, but a real, bright smile full of peace. He didn't know what the future would bring, or what danger her secret might invite, but in that moment, none of it mattered. The lonely girl who once delivered a pizza on a cold night had found warmth, not just from the heater, but from the kindness of one human heart that refused to turn away. Part 4. A Fragile Trust. The days after her secret came out were quiet but different. Daniel tried to act normal, but his mind kept returning to that night. The soft blue glow, her trembling voice, and the truth she carried alone for so long. Still, he didn't treat her any differently. He spoke to her like before, shared meals, and told her small stories about his work. He wanted her to feel safe, even if the truth still felt strange. Lyra noticed his kindness. Each day she seemed a little more open. She stopped hiding her curiosity and started asking questions about everything. About seasons, about how humans aged, even about why people smiled when they were sad. Daniel tried to explain, though sometimes he didn't have answers. She would listen quietly, then smile and say, Your world is complicated but warm. One morning, she stood on the balcony while the sky turned pale pink. She reached out her hand, catching snowflakes as they fell. They melt so fast, she whispered. Daniel came beside her. That's what makes them special, he said. They don't stay forever, but they're beautiful while they last. She looked at him thoughtfully. That's how humans are, isn't it? He smiled faintly. Maybe that's true. Lyra stayed silent, watching the sunrise. There was peace in her eyes, but also a quiet sadness, like someone who had seen too much. In the evenings, they often sat together in the small living room. Daniel would read or play quiet music on his old phone. Lyra loved music. She said it reminded her of colors, sounds that painted feelings she couldn't explain. Sometimes she'd hum along softly, her voice smooth and calming. One night, Daniel noticed she had fixed his broken lamp without tools. The wires had been burned out for months, but now it worked perfectly. How did you do that? He asked. Lyra looked a little embarrassed. I used a little energy, she said. Not much, it's something my kind can do. Daniel nodded slowly. Well, it's impressive. Thank you. She looked surprised by his reaction. You are not afraid? Should I be? He asked with a gentle smile. She shook her head. No, it's new. No one has ever said thank you for what I am. He leaned back in his chair. Then maybe they didn't see you the right way. Her eyes softened and she smiled quietly. That smile made the room feel warmer than the heater ever could. But as winter deepened, Lyra began to change. She became restless, often waking up in the middle of the night to look out the window. Sometimes Daniel found her sitting by the window at dawn, staring at the clouds like she was searching for something. One evening she said softly, "I think they're near." Daniel paused. "Who?" "The ones looking for me," she whispered. He frowned. "How do you know?" She closed her eyes. "The air feels different. I can sense the signal. It's weak but close." Daniel didn't understand much about signals or alien devices, but her fear was real. "Then we'll figure something out," he said firmly. "We'll keep you safe." She looked at him sadly. "You can't protect me from them." "Maybe not," he said. "But I won't stop trying." For a moment she looked at him in silence. Then she said softly, "You remind me of something my people never understood. Courage without reason." He smiled faintly. "I think it's just being human." Days passed and tension grew quietly between the calm moments. The nights felt heavier. Daniel sometimes thought he saw faint lights moving high in the sky, but he told himself they were planes. Still, Lyra seemed more alert, her ears catching sounds he couldn't hear. One evening, the power went out across the city. The lights flickered, then everything went dark. Lyra stood suddenly, her eyes glowing faintly blue. "It's them," she said, fear trembling in her voice. "They're close." Daniel moved closer. "How do you know?" "I can feel the energy. They're scanning." He grabbed a flashlight, but before he could turn it on, Lyra raised her hand. A soft glow filled the room, gentle and blue like moonlight. "Stay quiet," she whispered. For several minutes they stood in silence. Outside the wind howled. Then a faint hum passed through the building, low and deep, like a vibration under the floor. Daniel's heart pounded. Lyra closed her eyes, her breathing steady but tense. Then slowly the hum faded away. The city lights came back on. Lyra sank to the floor, trembling. "It's okay," Daniel said, kneeling beside her. "They're gone." She shook her head. "No. They found this place. They'll come again." Daniel took her hand gently. "Then we'll be ready next time." Her glowing eyes met his. "Why do you care so much?" she asked softly. He thought for a moment before answering. "Because you needed someone to care. And maybe that's what makes us human. We can't ignore someone who's lost." Her hand tightened around his. "You shouldn't risk yourself for me." "Too late," he said with a faint smile. Lyra's eyes shimmered, and a single tear, bright as a small light, rolled down her cheek. "You're not like the others," she whispered. "And you're not like the stories people tell," he replied. Over the next few days, they prepared quietly. Lyra taught Daniel small things: how to block signals with metal sheets, how to hide heat traces, how to listen for low frequencies in the air. She said it would give them time if her people returned. Daniel followed her instructions without question. He didn't know how much would work, but seeing her more at ease was worth it. One afternoon, while they worked on covering the windows, Lyra stopped and looked at him. "You don't ask me why I left my world," she said. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready," Daniel replied. She hesitated, then said quietly, "On my world, we live by logic. Everything has order. No one feels hunger, pain, or sadness. But no one feels joy either. When I first saw Earth, I felt something I never knew. Warmth, sound, chaos, and kindness. I wanted to feel it again. That's why I stayed." Daniel listened, moved by her words. "Sounds like you were looking for something real," he said. She nodded. "Yes. And I think I found it here." Her eyes softened. "But I don't want to bring danger to you." "You already brought something better," he said quietly. "Hope." She smiled again, the kind of smile that carried both light and sadness. That night, they sat together watching snow fall through the window. The city lights painted the sky orange and white. Lyra spoke softly. "If they find me again, I might have to go. But I want you to remember something." "What?" Daniel asked. "Kindness is stronger than fear. That's what your world taught me." He looked at her, realizing how much she had changed his life too. "Then maybe that's why you came here. To remind me of it." She smiled and leaned her head against the window glass. "Maybe," she said softly. "Or maybe the universe sent me to meet you." Outside, the snow kept falling, silent and endless. Inside, the two of them sat quietly, bound not by fear or secrets, but by something far more fragile and beautiful: trust. Neither knew what tomorrow would bring, but for that moment they felt safe, together in the small circle of warmth and light they had built. And far above the clouds, in the dark stretch of space, something unseen watched and waited. The morning after the long night of silence came quietly. The sky outside was gray and snow covered everything in a soft white layer. Daniel woke to the faint smell of tea and saw Lyra sitting by the window again. She looked calm, almost peaceful, but her eyes carried that faraway sadness he had learned to recognize. He rubbed his eyes and smiled sleepily. "You're up early again," he said. Lyra nodded. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. "The sky was calling." Daniel chuckled gently. That's a poetic way to say morning, but she didn't smile this time. She kept looking out the window as if listening to something beyond the wind. "It's time," she whispered. Daniel felt a quiet chill inside. "Time for what?" She turned to him, her expression calm but heavy. "They found me again. I can feel the pull. I can't stay here anymore." For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. He knew this day might come, but hearing it made his heart tighten. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Yes, if I stay, they'll find you too. They can track my energy. I can't let that happen." Daniel stood there, unsure what to say. He wanted to stop her, to tell her to hide again, but he saw the truth in her eyes. She had always known this day would come. She had just been waiting for the courage to face it. He sighed quietly. "Then I guess this is goodbye." She looked at him, her voice trembling slightly. "You gave me something I didn't know existed. A place to belong, even if only for a short time." Daniel smiled sadly. "You gave me something too. You reminded me what kindness really means." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind outside grew stronger, rattling the window. Then Lyra stood and walked to the small table where she had been fixing things the night before. On it sat Daniel's old phone, the one that had stopped working months ago. It was glowing faintly. "I fixed it for you," she said softly. "It's not just a phone now. It can connect to things. Not from here. If you ever see the sky light up and think of me, touch it, and maybe I'll hear you." Daniel looked down at it, speechless. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she said quickly. "Because when I was lost, you didn't turn me away." She smiled faintly, and for the first time Daniel noticed how peaceful her face looked. The fear that had once lived in her eyes was gone. That afternoon, the snow stopped falling and a strange stillness filled the air. Lyra asked to go for a walk one last time. Daniel agreed, even though his heart felt heavy. They walked through the quiet streets together. The city looked almost empty under the soft white snow. Every sound seemed distant. Only the crunch of their boots broke the silence. Lyra stopped once to look at a tree covered in frost. She touched one of the branches gently, her fingers glowing faintly blue, melting the ice into small drops of water. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "So are you, Lyra. You brought light into a place that had none." She looked at him with a warm smile. "You always say simple things, but they stay in the heart." They reached the edge of the park where the snow stretched wide and untouched. The sky above was beginning to clear, showing patches of soft blue. Lyra turned toward him. "This is where I have to go," she said. Daniel frowned. "Here?" she nodded. "They'll find me from the signal I left. I'll be safe. Don't worry." He tried to speak, but his throat tightened. He wanted to say so many things, that he would miss her, that the apartment would feel empty without her, that her laughter had made the long days brighter. But the words stayed trapped in his chest. She seemed to understand anyway. She reached out and placed her hand gently over his heart. "I'll remember this warmth," she said softly. It's the first true warmth I ever felt. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, fighting back tears. Will I ever see you again? Lyra smiled gently. Look at the stars sometimes. Maybe you'll see a blue one that moves against the wind. That will be me. He laughed quietly, though his voice trembled. Then I'll be watching. They stood in silence for a moment longer. Then a soft hum filled the air, low, distant, and full of energy. The snow around them shimmered faintly, and a small circle of blue light began to form near the ground. Lyra stepped back slowly, her eyes bright like stars. Thank you, Daniel, she said, for showing me that kindness can be a home. Before he could answer, the light grew brighter. For a heartbeat, he saw her standing there, glowing softly, peaceful and smiling. Then the light lifted her gently off the ground, and in a blink she was gone. The air grew still again. Only the snow remained and the faint sound of the wind. Daniel stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where she had been. The world around him looked the same, but everything inside him had changed. He finally turned and walked back home, each step slow and thoughtful. That night, the apartment felt silent again, like the first night she had arrived. But on the table, the repaired phone still glowed faintly blue, like a heartbeat waiting in the dark. He picked it up, touched the screen gently, and whispered, "Thank you, Lyra." The phone pulsed once in a tiny flash of light, and then went still. He smiled through the quiet and set it back down. Weeks passed, and life slowly returned to normal. Daniel went back to work, talked to people at the printing shop, and walked home through the same streets each evening. But something in him was different. He started noticing things he had ignored before: a child feeding birds in the park, an old man giving his coat to a stray dog, a neighbor helping someone carry groceries. Every small act of kindness reminded him of her. He began volunteering at the local shelter, helping people who had nowhere to go. Whenever he handed someone a blanket or a meal, he remembered the night he had opened his door to a quiet pizza girl with bright eyes and trembling hands. He never told anyone her story. Some things, he felt, were too precious to explain, but sometimes late at night he would sit by the window with a cup of tea and look up at the sky. He'd find the brightest star and smile, and on certain nights, when the sky was clear and the world was quiet, he thought he saw a soft blue light move across the heavens. Slow, graceful, and familiar. When that happened, he always whispered the same words, "I see you, Lyra, stay safe." Then he would sit there a little longer, warmed not by the heater, but by the memory of a stranger who had once knocked on his door, and who had taught him that kindness can travel even between worlds.